The new year is rapidly approaching, bowl season is already in full swing, and that means it's time for a new national champion to be crowned in college football. The college football playoff, the 4-team tournament that since 2014 has been used to anoint the new national champ, gets underway on New Year's Eve and culminates January 10th with the national championship game at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. And while this year's tournament will feature a number of the usual suspects, that doesn't mean there isn't plenty of intrigue and loads of compelling storylines to the 2021 CFP, which, by the way, will also serve as a showcase for a host of future NFL stars. So how's it going to shake out? And which players should you keep your eye on? We got you covered. Sit back, relax, and take this in. Since deciding in 2014 to move away from the arcane and somewhat controversial Bowl Championship Series playoff format, the NCAA has relied on a 13-person committee to determine which teams get to compete for the national championship. This year, the committee landed on reigning champs Alabama, whose participation is practically obligatory at this point, as well as Michigan, Georgia, and, believe it or not, Cincinnati, who now have the distinction of being the first team from outside the Power 5 conferences to earn a CFP berth. As the fourth-ranked team, however, the Bearcats will have to upset top-ranked Alabama to get into the national championship game. No small feat, even for a program that has yet to lose a game this year. Those two teams will square off in the Cotton Bowl, the first of two semifinal matchups on New Year's Eve, in a proverbial David versus Goliath showdown. Afterward, the second-seeded Wolverines will take on the number 3-ranked Bulldogs in the Orange Bowl in what figures to be a barn burner of a semifinal at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. And a week and a half later, the two semifinal winners will play each other in Indianapolis for all the gabagool. At this point, I'd probably be remiss not to acknowledge that Alabama, who demolished Ohio State in last year's national championship game en route to an 18th recognized national title, is the smart bet to win it all again this year. They're Alabama. Despite losing 6 players from last year's team to the NFL draft, Nick Saban's powerhouse program, which by the way has missed the college football playoff once since the tournament's inception in 2014, still powered its way to a 12-run record and earned top seed in the CFP by virtue of their 41-24 upset victory over the formerly undefeated, formerly top-ranked Georgia in the SEC championship game. Their mighty offense averaged a whopping 42.5 points per game this year thanks to sophomore phenom Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, who owes a debt of gratitude to Evan Neal, the standout offensive tackle who's poised to go in the first 5 picks of the upcoming NFL draft, and superstar wideout Jameson Williams, another projected 2022 first-round pick. Now, as always, Alabama is a force to be reckoned with, and, well, they're the champs till they ain't the champs no more. Having said that, Cincinnati could give the Crimson Tide a run for their money. Again, the Bearcats went undefeated this season to beat out perennial powerhouses like Notre Dame and Ohio State for the final CFP berth. And while the Bearcats obviously don't have a fraction of the big stage experience that Alabama does, this is their first CFP after all, they've lost just 1 game over the last 2 seasons, that lone defeat being a heartbreaking 24-21 loss to mighty Georgia in last year's Peach Bowl. Ultimately, the Bearcats are sound on both sides of the ball, ranking in the top 10 in the nation in both points per game and points allowed per game. Their success putting points on the board can largely be tied to continued development from senior quarterback Desmond Ridder, a potential first-round pick in the looming NFL draft, while their defense has thrived in part thanks to star cornerback Ahmad Gardner, who will almost certainly go in the first 15 picks come April 28th. Yes, they still head into the Cotton Bowl as 14-point underdogs, but that pass defense could finally be the thing that foils Bryce Young and Alabama. Cincinnati isn't the only team making its CFP debut this year, though. This also marks the first trip to this iteration of the Big Dance for Michigan, who haven't won a national title since 1997 and have generally fared well but not spectacularly since Jim Harbaugh took over as head coach in 2014. This year, however, was a different story. The plucky Wolverines grinded out a 12-1 record thanks to their solid running game and their stingy defense anchored by defensive end Aiden Hutchinson, the consensus top pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and 2 more prospective first-rounders in linebacker David Ojabo and defensive back Daxton Hill. And after hovering just outside the top 5 for much of the season, the Wolverines cemented that somewhat unexpected number 2 seed with an upset victory over Ohio State in late November, their first win over the Buckeyes in a decade, followed by a 42-3 shellacking of Iowa in the Big Ten championship game en route to their first conference title since 2004. Still, even as the favorite, Michigan will have its hands full with Georgia, who were poised virtually all season long to secure that number 1 seed, until they got spanked by Alabama in the SEC championship game, spoiling their undefeated season. That setback notwithstanding, the Bulldogs, who last appeared in a national championship game in 2017, are a behemoth, led by the nation's best defense, which allowed only 9.54 points per game this year. The next best defense in the country, which belonged to Clemson, they allowed on average 15 points per game this year. Turns out it's hard to score points against a defense that has 4 potential first-round NFL picks in it. Oh yeah, and the Bulldogs are averaging 39 points a game offensively too. So what are you pulling for? Do you want to see Cincinnati upset the mighty Crimson Tide en route to an improbable national championship? Would you rather see Alabama take on Georgia for all the marbles in a rematch of the SEC championship game? Or are you pulling for Michigan to regain some of their cachet with their first national championship in more than 2 decades? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. As always, we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.